Blaine, CFB Analytics is projecting 13-0. What's your reaction to that?
My first reaction was, huh? What? Who does this?
Yep. That's what I'm saying. Probably BYU grads.
Honestly, I look at the back half of BYU's schedule and I think, hey, they get on a roll then. There isn't any reason why they shouldn't be on a huge roll and roll out maybe with 6 or 7 or 8 in a row at the end of the season. But honestly, if they were 4-2 in their first 6 games, I'd be pumped.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to me, that would be phenomenal. Just knowing it's hard to win 13 practices in a row anymore. I mean, it's not win, but to be good 13 practices in a row is a hard thing to do. You go along and you go, wow, we really took a step backward in practice today. And so to think that you can win 13 weeks in a row, it's just hard to do. Even when BYU was playing in the Mountain West Conference or in the old WAC 13-0, how many times did that happen?
One time in history, and you were the backup for that team.
Right. And those were easier schedules than the schedule they're playing. And this year's schedule, we were talking about last year's schedule, how great it was, but how difficult it was at the beginning. But we knew Michigan State was kind of in a rebuild last year, which they still have phenomenal athletes. We weren't sure about how good West Virginia was going to be. Maybe they were a little bit better than we thought they were going to be. But that schedule compared to this year, Wisconsin going into this, I'm feeling like Wisconsin's a legit top 15 team. LSU's a legit top 15. Maybe they're both top 10 teams. Boise feels like they've got one of their stronger teams coming back this season. Utah's always going to be a challenge, even though I feel like this is a rebuild. You lose 4 NFL offensive linemen and an NFL tailback. You're going to
draft picks.
Yeah, you're going to. You got to rebuild a little bit, right? But Utah just seems to reload and always be good defensively. That's a crazy tough game. That can go in either way, regardless of the talent level of both teams. So to me, to say, hey, 13-0, come on. That's like a dream. If it happens, it'll be the greatest team in the history of BYU.
Like BYU in 84 is coming off of 79, 1 loss, 80, 81, 82. These are like quality years, 82, 8-4. But 83 was an 11-1 season. So you're coming off of all this momentum.
Well, and if you remember, in that 83 season, they lost the opener on a fluke bomb at the end of the game.
Baylor.
And then we won. I shouldn't say we because I hate to say we, but we.
You were on the team.
On the team. So we got on a roll that season, and the core of the offensive line, almost all of the defense, all back. So we graduated Steve Young, but Robbie was coming back. Robbie and I were competing for the job that year. All the other pieces were in place. Stars at wide receiver, great tight ends, a phenomenal offensive line, and a defense that had been unbelievable the year before, and almost everybody back. And then Kurt Govea, Leon White, Marv Allen, Kerry Whittingham. I mean, all NFL caliber linebackers, 4 of them, and an NFL free safety in Kyle Morrell. And on a roll with 11 wins in a row, feeling like we may never lose another football game.
And so, you didn't until 1985.
So in 84 we won, and we were getting to the end of that year where I remember thinking maybe we'll never lose again, ever. And then in 85 we started off and won several games. So that was quite a roll. That doesn't happen very often where all the stars align and you go on that kind of a streak. But you're right. Even that 83 team built on, and 82 was a little bit of a step back, but 81 and 80 and 79. And these were 11 win seasons over and over and over again. And then finally you have to get a little bit lucky. There were many games in 84 where we get a little bit lucky at the end of a game and we get a bounce and we win. I don't know if we get as lucky as I saw on Sunday to win the PGA tournament, but
Justin Thomas, right?
To have people bounce off of trees and have
crazy
putts hang on the edge for 10 seconds, but we got lucky.
Just for context, there have only been 25 teams who have won at least 25 games in a row, ever.
Right.
BYU is one of them. That's pretty crazy. So now we sit here and we're watching practice. We're seeing BYU's development. What have you seen here in kind of week 3 of practice from BYU?
They really look sharp. I mean, I feel like, and Ty would say no way, and Elisa would say no way, but they look like they're game ready to me. They look like they're to the point in fall camp where they're going, let's go play somebody else right now. They're looking sharp. I think the bulk of the offense and defense is in, and the players look good with it. They understand what they're supposed to do. Now it's just refining assignments a little bit, and now it's about prep specifically for Portland State and then for LSU. So I really feel good about where this team is, way better than I felt about where this team was last year at the same point in fall camp.
Yesterday, one of the big topics of discussion was physicality. We talked about that in what's trending. Specifically, though, physicality with the receivers. Why do you think that is such a high priority for this team?
Well, first of all, they're playing against 3 teams that will have a very similar mentality to what Michigan did to them at Michigan. And that is, okay, if they're going to try to throw the ball around, we're going to get up. We're going to play in their face, press coverage with a secondary and linebackers. And if they can't be physical at the line of scrimmage and get off coverage, they're not going to be able to throw the football. And then if you can't throw it at all in this offense, it's going to be tough to run the football. And those teams, I'm talking about LSU, Wisconsin, and Utah, their philosophy is all very similar, and that's we're just going to out-physical you. So these wide receivers, when we say physicality, it's 2 things. It's just being strong at the line of scrimmage and not letting people get their hands on you, but it's also about being crafty at the line of scrimmage. You know, their coach, Ben Cahoon, is not a big guy, was not a big guy. Try press covering Ben Cahoon when he was back playing. You couldn't do it because you couldn't get a hand on him. He was so quick. He'd put a jab step here, swim through. Next thing you know, you lunged, and he's behind you. And so it's not just about being physically strong. It's about understanding how to get a release, how to use quickness at the line of scrimmage to get away from press coverage. So to me, in the Portland State game, shouldn't be a problem. They're not going to physically match up with BYU. Now they go down to Houston and play LSU. That's one of the things I'm watching for. Can these wide receivers get off press coverage against physical, athletic defensive backs? Now, I think they have the skill set to be able to do it, maybe better than we've had in several years. But until they do it on the field, I'm not going to believe it.
Blaine Fowler is on BYU Sports Nation. You can watch him tonight on After Further Review at 7 Eastern Time. Which of the receivers, or you can name a couple if you want, are most likely to succeed in this situation against press coverage on BYU's roster, in your opinion?
As I'm watching the receivers, the one that kind of stands out to me as the most complete right now is Micah Simon. And I know that's not a name that everybody's talking about, but because he's got outstanding speed, but he also has some shake to him, and he is a very good route runner. I've been watching to see who impresses me with their route running. So he seems to be precision. He seems to be like Ben Cahoon says, I want you to do this. The next time he does it exactly. And so I like his exactness in his route running. And so to me, I like the way he looks, and I like his ability to get off the line of scrimmage. You know, they have speed with Tanner. Bo Tanner, who has some shake to him too.
You have to be very distinct, because is it Bo, is it Tanner, or is it Bo Tanner?
Bo Tanner. So, hey, I'm not saying Tanner Mangum has some speed. For a quarterback, he's got good speed, but let's not compare him to a wide receiver. So, and Trinnaman's got speed. So they've got some flat out, you know, stretchers that can stretch the defense out there. And then Shumway has also looked pretty good. He's a big, strong guy at the line of scrimmage, and so he can use brute force to maybe get off of coverage and swipe guys' hands away and get off of coverage. But to me, when I'm looking right now through a few weeks of camp, I'm going, who could be a breakout guy that nobody's talking about at the wide receiver position? And I like the way Simon runs routes, and I like that he does have some explosiveness to him, and that combination could be really, really good at wide receiver.
We found out yesterday that Taipei Vaca, who could be offensive line, could be defensive line, could redshirt, as well as Kairos Tonga, who is a defensive lineman. Both those guys are with the team, possible contributors this season. What type of impact do you expect from those 2 guys?
It's hard to know yet, but I expect them both to probably play defensive line. So I know that Vaca was an offensive lineman in junior college at Diablo, and Oregon recruited him. He was a commit to Oregon, but when the coaching change happened, he decommitted and came here. So that's a big get for BYU, really athletic. But, you know, he played as a 275-pound defense or offensive lineman in junior college. And BYU, I feel like, as I look at that 2 deep, I look at the first 12 that they have on the offensive line, I feel like Mike Empey feels really good about what he's got there, about who those 12 guys on the airplane are going to be and how that depth works, and he really likes the talent with that group, and they've been working really well with one another. On the defensive line, the way Elisa likes to call this defense and the way they like to be aggressive and get after the passer, you need to have a rotating group of 8 guys on that defensive line. You really do. And this just gives them more options. And Tyrese is a bigger guy, a true freshman that's 6'5" and 300 plus. And so he can play inside. I think Vaca could be a guy that can play inside or outside. So to me, what it is, it offers you depth, maybe another little skill set to look at, because what they're trying to figure out now is what's the best combination in certain situations. Do we move traditional defensive ends down to D tackle and passing downs? Do we have 4 guys? Do we have 4 guys that we can do that with that are defensive end type, 2 of them that can move down and play inside and passing down? So we have 4 pass rushers on the field. So now I think E is looking at combinations of guys in certain situations that he can put out there, and that gives him 2 more big body options that can contribute. Now, whether or not this late in the game, they end up being there in the first few games. I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. But you can never have too many great options on that defensive line the way this group likes to play defense.
And when Portland State's your opener, you have an opportunity to hopefully get some run for certain guys as you prepare for that tough run, as you mentioned. Blaine, we appreciate the time, and we will see you on After Further Review.